welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We had fun last night. We enjoyed it. I feel like I'm glitching out really bad lately. What is going on with the camera here? All right, we'll look into that in a little bit. It was doing it last night. Tell me if it gets really bad, guys. We're having some connection issue or maybe a camera issue, one of the two. We had a lot of fun last night. I really enjoyed watching body cams with you. So, excuse me. We had, I guess it was more like a conversation than an interview. So I spoke with Mike King from Profiling Evil a few times. And when we were at CrimeCon, I saw him. He was doing a panel. And what he talks about is really interesting to me because he talks about cults. He talks about cult leaders and really a lot of psychology things that I'm very interested in. So when we had a conversation on camera for the first time, it was very natural, very easy. And I appreciate you guys who did go and watch it and support his channel as well. What I wanted to do is give you guys just a little bit more insight on kind of some of the topics we touched on. Some things you don't really talk about them unless someone brings them up in a conversation. And so I'm going to play the interview for you guys, give you some insight, and you guys can ask questions as we watch it so I can give you my perspective on it. So I'd love to be able to do that and make sure that everyone can, there's just some topics we've never really touched on. So I'd love to be able to get into that. Don't forget, I keep forgetting to tell you, so I don't forget. Go enter the giveaway. It is in the community tab. I posted on it this morning. I'll continue to post it. You guys have till, I think it's this Friday coming up to enter the giveaway. All you have to do is comment Scar Warrior for your chance to win a Warrior shirt, extra large. That can't change, by the way. That's the shirt that's coming. It is a Keith Morrison signed Tennessee postcard and a exclusive Dateline Live wristband. That giveaway is still open for you until this Friday. When we do our Friday live, we will pick the winner on live so you guys can watch it happen. You'll get to see who wins live. So it's going to be really cool. And then if you are the winner, you need to email me at askcolbyj@gmail.com and we will make sure we get you your winnings. Okay, so jumping into our interview, last thing I'll say is I really enjoyed this time with Mike. He's got first of all, he's just a great dude. And on top of that, he asked some really, really good questions, came from a little bit of a different angle. So I really appreciated that. And I think I just enjoyed being able to talk to him. So with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you guys have your options. Ask questions. Let me know if it's too loud or anything like that. Should be good. But we're going to kind of watch it and then I'll pause it when I have something to say. Ask your questions in the chat.
Actually had some time together at CrimeCon. We decided we were going to chat about it publicly. So Colby, thanks for joining me on Profiling Evil.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It was really good to see you. And I'm glad we can kind of have this conversation for others to get to know a little bit more.
Well, I don't know if people realize how, this in some ways is really traumatizing for you. And in other ways, I suspect it's all part of this dealing process that you've got to go through.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, right? Because I have to give you guys the secret. Mike's a good guy. He didn't say anything about it. You guys know we have our beautiful sign right here. If you did not notice, I'm going to out myself here. If you did not notice, halfway through the interview, the sign is gone behind me. It fell down twice while we were talking. I was so embarrassed. It's never fallen down. And it fell down twice during this interview. Just so you guys can see later in the interview, you're going to see that it's not there. And that's why. So many layers, so many people of your family. And, you have all these death dates and all these birthdays and all these things that you have these memories from. So it's very multi-layered.
Yeah, crazy. Well, I appreciate you taking time to do this. And I hope we've given this enough time so that you've had a chance to kind of sort through things. I in particular want to dive into Chad Daybell's prison letters. And I think I've made it pretty clear in my videos that I am incredibly offended by those. But I'm not any more offended by those as I am your mother's manipulative rhetoric and these destructive patterns of belief that turned your family, and frankly, I think the Daybell family, into this kind of walking crime scene. What are your thoughts?
So that's a great comparison, by the way, is what's the difference between Lori and her interviews and Chad Daybell's letters. So I'm glad he asked the question the way he did, because that was a lot of people asking me, well, what's the difference between them having, an interview versus letters? Well, it's very different. Lori isn't interviewing twice a week, every week, the way that the social media sites say that Chad Daybell's letters are going to come out. So that's the one difference. We've never heard from him. We don't know what he's thinking. And pretty quickly you find out that him and Lori are cut from the same cloth. And the first thing they're going to say is that they're innocent, that they are good people, that they are people of God. And if I'm being honest with you, that's one of the biggest, I guess, word triggers in the world is to try to use God's name for all of this evil and try to say that this was them being good followers of Christ. And so that's also hurtful on top of all the other layers of losing your family. And then just to touch on Tammy's family, like, I don't know exactly where everybody stands. I know how they feel about Chad. One of the things I wanted to say was, what I mean by Tammy's family is Tammy's extended family that was there for her. Sometimes I think I don't explain exactly what I'm thinking in my head. So what I mean by Tammy's family is I hadn't reached out and talked to Tammy's family specifically about the letters. I'm sure that that's very hard. That's a whole nother thing, because most of what we've seen from Chad's letters are very directed towards his life that he had before with Tammy. I have not spoken to them directly about how they feel with all of this coming out, right? Because this is a hard thing, right? It's kind of like the same thing with the interviews. It's very hard when someone takes the actual person, the criminal, takes it public and starts doing all these things. I have not spoken to them about it. Later on, we do discuss Chad's kids. So I just wanted to make that clear. What I'm talking about here is specifically Tammy's extended family, the one that came and read their impact statements, that were there, that loved Tammy. This has to be hard for them. And I get that. I have not spoken to them. And I think it's just because it is a sensitive topic, and it's just hard to navigate when somebody who has caused so much pain is now on social media. Everybody's going to read these letters. People know who Chad is, and claiming all these things, that he's a good guy, that he'd never do this, he loves his wife, and just on and on and on. It's the same thing, trying to make themselves look like good people. So it's really damaging, to be honest with you. It's hard.
Well, you're going to be airing this on your channel as well, and this is like an open forum. You can ask me any questions you want. I'm going to ask you questions, and just to kind of level set so that you're aware. And I don't know how deeply you've looked into my background, but I did a 28 years of law enforcement where I dealt with cults as an investigator. I led the ritual crime task force for the state of Utah looking at ritual crime. So I specifically focused on people who try to bend and twist religion, and that you are dead center on, because there is nothing more powerful than when a person believes that they're following a prophet of God, or they're following God themselves. To them,
See, and that's what's so dangerous. This is why we hit on this in this channel, right? I'm not some kind of cult expert, but Mike is. Mike really understands this. I wish I would have thought of more questions for him, because it was a format where it was more back and forth. The biggest thing is we have to continue to break down the psychology of what's going on behind the scenes. And what I love here is you're going to get a great perspective from Mike on how cult leaders, and it's crazy the comparisons Mike's going to make to Chad's behavior to other major cult leaders, but using an entity like God, using a higher power, is definitely one of the more, from what I've seen, gets people to do a little bit more extreme, a little bit quicker, right? So not everything with just like a cult, like join the circle, here's your power, we're all friends, like as much as it is higher being, higher calling, promises of if you do this, you get this kind of thing. Those seem to be the ones that cause, I don't know, some of the most damage that there
and
is.
turn and ask them, even if we were to ask in legitimate circumstances, our listeners who have, hopefully, our listeners are filled with people of faith, whether it's Buddhism or Sikhism or Christianity or Islam or Judaism. And I've had the opportunity to work in all those circles.
I have not
Um,
heard of David Love, but that's horrible. Anybody who uses God as a manipulation tool is automatically leading some kind of cult. If you are being spiritually manipulated, that is cult-like behavior, and that person is using one of the most dangerous tools, which is your faith and your belief. And if they're trying to figure out a way to manipulate your faith and your belief system to get you to do what they want by guilting you, you should first know that God doesn't do that to you. So it's going back to the root, who is God? You have to find out how God behaves, how he talks through the Bible. So that way people can't come to you and say, well, God told me to tell you this, and this, and you can't just go through that. You need your own, you need your own, you need your own revelations in life. You need to know what you believe and think.
People of faith are deeply offended when someone takes something that's so sacred to them and turns it so that they can take advantage of them in a predatory way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the most manipulative kind of thing, right? I think the hardest thing is when when you grow up believing and you build your faith over time and you hear the same name that you see and know is good and have studied and come to know for yourself, like the name of Jesus, be used in the same exact sentence as Jesus is telling me what to do. I have seen Jesus. I am witnessed Jesus. Jesus is my friend. Jesus is my savior. Well, it both can't be right. So I think it's a hard thing to see on a consistent basis, them constantly be blasphemous to God, honestly.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, as we go through this, I'm kind of going to springboard, starting with Chad's letters, writing from
Yeah.
death writing from death row,
Mhm.
and to me, it's so frustrating. These letters that are filled with warm memories, filled with spiritual language, but
Right.
beneath all that is still this predator who was convicted of killing your brother and sister and his
Yeah.
wife. And
Mhm.
so when you talked about those letters, I wanted to just also tell you that after I completed a 30-year career, I went to work for an international company where I worked with the world's largest police departments and spent the next 17 years of my career in airplanes talking with people and marketing the company that I worked for, which was a geography GIS mapping company. And I understand marketing. And all I feel like I'm watching, frankly, Cody, is a drip campaign in preparation
Yes.
for something else. What's your thought?
Ex I'm gonna cut myself off here. Yeah, this was a great point. We have to look at what could be going on behind the scenes, right? We talked about how Chad cannot directly make money off of anything. Lori cannot from their crimes, right? They're not allowed to write about their cases and their crimes and make money off of it. But if they write books, if they do something, somebody can get the money to someone else, and then that money over time can be deposited into their accounts because you can't regulate that, right? So I understand they have to pay a million fees, all those things. But again, the marketing idea about generating money around what's going to come next. We know Chad Daybell has been writing books for however long he has. This man is for sure going to write a book about this, especially as he ramps up this idea that he's going to write letters. Even if he hasn't thought of the book specifically, it's going to happen. My thought always is, what are they doing all day? And what comes next after this? Well, to me, I feel like that's what would be next for them, is them both writing their own stories and telling you the truth of what they believe and think, which we all know is lies. Let's see. On Facebook, his followers are up to 65. There's 7 letters so far. I'm disgusted. and leave my comments on there. I love it. You guys have been amazing doing that too. We talked about this, and we'll get into a little bit more later in the video about the action that can be taken. We looked into it. There's a lot of little things. It's a very complicated situation around freedom of speech, and we're going to talk about it at the end of the video. So enjoying the ESP chatting with Kelsey, great spouse and bride to Colby. Thank you. Yeah, she's the best. 100%. I love that you said that. Look, we know for a fact that there's something about both Lori and Chad that want attention. That's just clear. We know Chad is going to write a book at some point. This is a perfect example of let's get my name out there. Let's have people read what I think and feel. And then when is he going to drop the book? Because Lori's going to drop a book. She said it in her interview. She said, I'm currently writing a book my whole entire life. You're going to get to know it. So from my perspective, there is a part of them that needs some kind of credibility, validation, something of that nature from the public, from people to hear what they have to say, even though they're delusional. But the reality is I see those letters. You ever agreed with yourself and nod your head with yourself with the same exact background? A little wild. Kind of being something like, let me get my name out there. And we know how, if social media tells us anything, there is ways to monetize it. Whether he gets it directly, it can still go to someone else and then be given to him indirectly. So it's not like they can't monetize off of it either. So I think there's a lot of different angles of why he's doing it, because here he is on death row, has nothing to do, and decides out of nowhere, I'm going to write letters every week about who I am, my past, my experiences, my spiritual, whatever. I mean, where is this all coming from? That's the biggest question. What's the point? What are you trying to do here?
It's interesting. And I don't know if you caught my first video on letter number 1 that he put out, but I immediately drifted toward Adolf Hitler and Mein Kampf, this effort to go in and rewrite history in a more favorable.
I think that's the point, right? I truly, okay, this is where it gets sticky. Is Chad promoting what we consider the kind of speech that is a threat to society? No, he's not. His letters do not exude actual language of a threat to society, right? He's not saying things that there's very fine lines here. This is what we need to understand. There's very fine lines on what is said and how it can be dealt with, because it's such a touchy subject. We have freedom of speech. There are parameters to freedom of speech. I heard it best said like this. You have freedom of speech. You can say whatever you want, but you can't go up to your boss and say F you and call him every name in the book and expect there not to be some kind of consequence. So that's kind of how it works with free speech. If you go to a place where, yes, you can say whatever you want, tweet whatever you want, but there are always going to be parameters with companies, businesses, like whatever platform you're on, you have to go by what they say, right? So if you and do something and say something that's hurtful and harmful to society, that platform has the right to remove that. So if you actually read through his letters, like we did and listened to, there's nothing in there that's absolutely making him a threat. So I'm just being as biased as possible. You guys know how I feel. I'm sorry, unbiased as possible. And you guys know that I do not agree with it. And I would love for him to be deplatformed, because he is a danger to society. But what he's saying right now is not showing that. So there's no reason that they can say, well, yeah, we need to take this down. It's an outrage. It's hurtful. It's not okay. And I'm not saying that it's okay at all. What I'm saying is free speech is a very, very strong thing in our country. But the reality is he is a cult leader, and there is proof on his teachings leading to being a threat to society, right? That's where it's like, okay, but the problem is he disguises it with God. It's very covert. It's not outwardly something that a platform would say, this is too much. This would now get into, this is why what we have to get into this at some point. Religion is a touchy subject in our world, Because religion is supposed to be the freedom to worship, right? Well, freedom to worship what? We've now created an ability for you to worship whatever. You're allowed to have the freedom to worship. So when you start pulling church and cults and God and all that stuff, it gets blended into the church thing unless it explicitly incites something that is a threat to society. He is covertly trying to convert people, and when they come in closer to the cult, the closer, let's say he's at the pew, the closer you get to the pew, the worse it gets with him, because the closer you get to him, the more he exposes to you or tells you about the cult, about you and your past lives and your powers and all that crazy stuff. But yeah, his letters are not actually doing anything that breaks what I would call, or yeah, he's not a threat to society, but it's sick that a murderer can have a platform and write letters all day every day on everything, and it makes zero sense. How I just don't understand it.
Way. And we've seen it even in politics today, that if you continue to tell a lie enough times, people either become fatigued or they start to forget and they start to
Mhm.
believe the new reality rather than the old. So when you talk about the idea of writing a book and wanting to write a book, I always go back to what's the motivation. And currency is not always a dollar you can hold in your hand. There are other forms of currency that predators prefer even more than money. And I believe that the currency that they're after, knowing that legally, if they write a book, that the courts are going to take that and push that, rightly so, to the victims. The currency is much more valuable to them than financial.
So I'll say this as a victim, and I hate that word. I really do. I understand people are victims. I understand that I would classify as a victim, and I'm not taking the word victim. But I will use this as someone who is the victim to this crime on the most receiving end, and that's not taking away from anybody else. I mean more from everything culminated. I understand it all because I've seen all the loss. Okay. So as a receiving a person of this crime, my biggest thing is currency for him to be able to pay me off those books, and current and him getting currency of whatever his jollies. And then they're like, well, it's okay. He'll write his books. You get the money. I would put that money. I don't know. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want anything to do with that. Why would I want money that came from the guy who's writing a book about his fake life, who unalived my entire family? Why would I want that? That's just wrong in every way, shape, and form. That's wrong. So I wouldn't want it. Number one. Number two, his currency is this. That's what I'm trying to say. When you are a leader like this, like Chad Daybell is, you don't necessarily just need money. At this point, he knows money doesn't do too much. It's really about getting the word out there, which is even more dangerous. Now he doesn't have to worry about his food, where he sleeps, none of that. So when you take away, let's call it the word survival necessity, which is what we work in society for. Everybody works to make money so they can survive, so you can pay your rent, so you have a place to live, so you have something to eat. That is like the necessity. When you remove necessity, somebody's necessity to have to provide money, money no longer matters to you, which is only really one way to do that, which would be in prison. Now currency no longer is a part of your life. For the rest of your life, you're basically waiting to die. What does someone in Chad Daybell's seat do? And in my opinion, he goes harder into his religious beliefs. He goes harder into indoctrination. He goes harder into those categories. But I have told you guys before, I don't want any restitution from any of them. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want anything to do with it.
Gain. But I was troubled when the new website came out, and people can go to the website if they want and look at those goofy letters. But clearly at the top of that website is an indication this is not for monetary gain. Well, I believe it is for gain. and whether somebody's going to get $1 through a back door or a book is going to be written and the victims will ultimately get a tiny portion after lawyers and everyone else get their portions. I don't know, but I think the currency is much bigger. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I mean, look, the hardest part about it all. Hold on, hold on. There he is. Good to see you, Mike. I really appreciated our conversation. We got Mike in the house, everybody. Is the story that's being told is fabricated, right? There's just so much evidence against what he's saying and what Lori's saying. And so I really have tried to dive in on the channel about, well, what is the psychology behind this? Like, what are they trying to gain here? Because they can't directly get the money. I mean, I don't know if Lori can get the money. I don't know if she has somebody who will give it to her if she does something. But with Chad's family, if I'm being honest, my biggest thing with it is like, it feels like he has to keep his hooks in the people that believe in him, which I think are his kids from what I've seen. And also, yeah, I'd like to say Mike did a great job. We talked about that it was an open platform, but he really asked the hard questions. And I don't mean the hard questions, but thought through questions that allow these kind of conversations to happen. When you talk to somebody who's very well versed in this world, who understands it, they're going to ask you completely different questions than other people because he has such a different mindset and understanding of how this works and how cults work. So I think without him asking the questions the way that he did, you wouldn't get the answers. We wouldn't have that clarity. So just big shout out to Mike. If you guys you can go watch this whole video without any Colby interruptions, we'll call them, over on Profiling Evil, and the link is in the description for you. Now I don't know how current that is, but I've seen how much they defend him.
Because one of the things that people sometimes are critical of children and their responses, and I've never been one to believe in being critical about what the responses of family are. Number one, they've lost their mother in the Daybell case. They have lost their father through the criminal justice case. And we've seen over and over again that kids still, they love their parents. You'd probably love your mom deeply, but you don't love the behavior and the wacky person that she became. And so I don't know, explain kind of your thoughts in regard to that, because you've taken a very clear stand that Lori is different than mom.
Yeah, and you know what it is? It really is just, I learned in life that at some point you have to pick a side. And what I mean is that this is evil. This is evil. What they believe is evil. And you can love someone with all your heart and also know that what they've done is evil and what they are saying is evil and what they're doing is harmful to this day. So for me, it was like, well, I know this isn't teachings of Jesus. I had to come to my own spiritual thing because of this, because I had to go through this. I had to go figure out what I believed because it was all destroyed. Like, just part of the wake was my belief system because I thought my mom was a good person. I thought she was this good, devout mom who served the Lord and was serving children and all this kind of stuff. So I had a really I was deeply shattered by all of this in so many different ways. My biggest thing is I understand loving your parent. I understand that perspective. But my other biggest problem is at some point the reality does have to set in. You do have to look at the facts and you do have to make a decision. And my problem that I have with the situation is just seeing the turned face, blinding eyes, whatever you want to call it, is seeing that there is no, my dad's a good person. He never did this. He was framed. He was put in this position by Lori, like just all of that stuff, which is just not true. It's just not true. And so that's where my issue is really with it, is that it's just zero acknowledgement of reality and almost like this belief system behind the scenes that they have, that Chad and Lori are being attacked by the general public for being good people, or that Chad, if we're just talking about Chad, that he's the reason he's being persecuted is because he is a prophet, which is a lie. So it's hard to see it, to be honest with you. It's hard to see support in his favor in what he did and say he didn't do it. So I want to address this a little bit deeper because, again, obviously, the public perception that I've seen is that at least Emma, and I just have to be more direct here. At least from what I understand, Emma's not a fan of me. I've never met her. I've never met any of them. I've never directly tried to be disrespectful. I've heard a lot of things about things that they've said publicly about me, not that they, what she said about not being like Colby. We've had some fun with it just because I'm just responding to it in a different way. But at the end of the day, I don't hate them. I don't know them. I don't have hate in my heart for people. It's a sad situation because if you would just look at really what's happening in the situation, you could heal from the situation. And I have a lot of people I know that are stuck in this place that they will not let their brains accept the information. I talk to you guys about this all the time, that the most important thing in your life is about acceptance. There's almost called radical acceptance. Radical acceptance can be as in radically quickly that you accept it, but really all it means is that you just accept the situation for what it is. They do not accept that Chad is a bad guy, and they're still stuck in where they were. And I just saw this in the unknown number reaction that we just did on the channel. If you guys want to go watch that video, you can. Basically, at the end of all things, it's so hard to turn on a parent. I get that. It's hard to believe that your parent that you love, that raised you, could hurt somebody or become a multi murderer. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And it's hard. I get it. I am first person can tell you I understand that. What the problem is that you can't pretend that it didn't happen to make it better. You just can't do that. You can't pretend that this was all Lori or all Chad. If people in my family were to say this is all Chad's fault, I'd be like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's not. It's actually not Chad's fault. It's not solely Chad's fault. It's not solely Lori's fault, and it's not solely Alex's fault. It's all of their fault. So you can't do that. So Norma says, Colby, you've been so respectful in stating what you don't know. That is a wonderful thing to say. I know that someone rebuked me here when I said the same thing, and they were right to do it. Yeah. It's a survival tactic to live in denial like that. But you're not going anywhere with that. That's the point. And to defend him and say he's innocent, I don't know if they watched the trials.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Do you ever see a day where you and the Daybell children sit down and have a chat?
That's a great question because I'm not opposed to talking to them. And that's the thing. I've tried to explain this before. It's not like I hate them. I don't even know them. The truth is, right? Like, and that's the thing. It's been like made enemies kind of thing, right? They've said stuff about me, whatever. I've reacted to it. I've kind of stood my ground with it, but I've never attacked them. I've never went out of my way. I don't know them. I've never met them in my life. If there could be a way that I could at least say what I just said to you to them in a very calm way and just have them have a thought-provoking thought that possibly what I'm saying is true, then yeah, I would talk to them because I don't have malice in my heart for them. I don't want anything bad for them in their lives. I fundamentally disagree with what they're doing, and I can see where it's coming from, and it's coming from a lifetime of indoctrination and a lifetime of a man telling you he's a prophet or whatever spiritual stuff he did and said. It's how do you do that? How do you turn on your dad? But I understand because I had to figure out how I knew what my mom did was wrong, and I can't stand for it no matter who my mom was. And so I think it's also hard because some people can't believe the information. They just can't believe it. It's too hard to conceive, so they just never go there. I think that may be another part of it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think back to the trial, and there was so the trials
Mhm.
on both your mom's side and Chad's side, witness testimony that was incredible, uh, and frankly, even damning from both the defense and the prosecution side. The defense didn't offer anybody that made people feel any more confident that this was a setup versus this was an apocalyptic framework. The light and dark, the zombies, the translated beings. You mentioned in your mind that Daybell's children may have had a lifetime of indoctrination. Was your mother's uh, um, ritual kind of bizarreness dramatically changing, or was it consistently um, evolving to the point that it became what it did? I always said that one of the characteristics of cults, in my experience, was that they always experienced or are always expressed the need for more light and knowledge than anyone else. They had to have the secret inside path, the direct
Right.
line of authority, those kinds of things. What are your thoughts around that?
That's a great question too. I love the way that you're framing it because so when I was growing up, I would consider because I grew up obviously LDS because my mom was LDS. I would consider us like what everybody calls Jack Mormons in a sense, where we weren't super followers of the rules. Like we didn't really go to church that much when I was younger, like really younger. Um, I don't know what really younger is. My mom always had a belief system. My mom taught me how to pray and believe in God. My mom, one thing she did in my life was she taught me to like pray for myself. She taught me how to like seek a relationship with God by praying. That was what she taught me. So I had prayed for things and seen God in my life. And then obviously I went through a lot when I was a kid and I would pray and I could just feel God's presence. So I had a testimony of God from an early point in my life. When it came to her and religion, that kicked up over time. Now, there was moments, I've mentioned this before, there's moments like where she came to me and told me, I've got 2 years to live, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die in 2 years. And things like that that you don't know what to do with when you're 8 years old. You're
Yeah, I was
terrified.
going to just say, how traumatizing for a child to hear that kind of malarkey.
Right. And there's nothing you can do about it, right? You're helpless. Nothing you can do. And then, like when things got hard, we'd run away. And, the whole idea of doing a group driving off the cliff Thank you. Somebody finally takes my side, Kim. Let's change these to green. Let's try some green on it. I'm glad you said that because I was never Rubby. That was never me. I'm glad somebody believed me. The family when I was, I think, 11, 10 maybe. So not too much away from that time. Those kind of things were the extreme part of her, but the religious extreme, it felt like it really kicked in after we moved to Hawaii. So 2014 is when she was like flying from Kauai to Oahu to go to the temple almost every week. Like she needed to be in the temple. She needed to be doing something. She was buying the books. But again, I'm 18, 19. I'm not paying attention to what she's doing. I'm just not. I notice what her going to the temple, but I'm not thinking like, oh, what books is she reading? What author is she into right now? It really kicked in when we moved back though. So that was kind of like when I noticed a big shift in like her devotion to the LDS church. When we moved back to Arizona, I came back from college and that's when I was with my wife and like had just started dating her. And that's when I feel like when I left, it went from 0 to 100 as far as a gear shift. And I think it's because I was out of the house. Tylee was busy with school and friends. and JJ was at school, so she literally had nothing to do. And I think that that time that she had, really just, I've talked about this before. I think you and I can agree that most of the time some of these things exist prior to like the big explosion. It's not just like out of nowhere. But she always had like a very fantasy, she loved fantasy. I think she got lost in fantasy. And so I pull that because I think that's really important here in context is I think once that's the thing, I can't knock what Lori did that was good. You guys hear a lot of the things that I've had to come to terms with, but it's not like she did nothing good ever. That's just not true. And the one foundational piece that has saved me my entire life was knowing that I could pray and believing in God. That was like what when this is what I was talking to somebody about the other day. There's comes a time in your life, your worst time, and it's your foxhole. Okay. And there is an old saying that says there's no atheist in a foxhole. Well, really what that comes down to is you're going to find out, to me, how you define that is you're going to find out what you believe when it all goes to hell. What are you doing in that moment? And I had a foundation of praying and believing in God, and she taught me that that was real because she would say you can pray. She taught me about praying. And so I always knew I had the ability to say prayers and believe that I could speak to God because I believed I'd seen God work in my life before. And so that's kind of where that's where she did something really right, is taught me how to do that and have that relationship. But again, I also can see a lot of where a lot of other things existed and some of the problems that probably did lead down the wrong paths. But when we did the what creates a villain video, I try to lay out an explanation that there's always your decision making and the fork in a road, and you always make a decision at the end of the day. And if you keep taking that wrong side, you're still going to come down to another fork and you get to make another decision. And if you keep making the same wrong decisions, that really does become about making decisions more than anything. So she started reading those books. I remember the name Julie Rowe. I know that. I'd heard that name at least once, but I didn't know who Julie Rowe was. So it's not like it mattered in context. But she, I think, fell in love with this idea that there was this so much going on and this idea that there was something so much bigger than what she was doing that she couldn't be happy where she was. She had to have some purpose or something of that nature. And it all kind of led down this path till once she met Chad, she was already kind of there and he just pushed her over the edge. I think that's what happened.
You know, I've often identified the two as gasoline and flame coming together. And I would like to, I'm kind of in this place in my life where I'd like to write a book about the cult playbook, but I don't want anybody to know the information, although I think the cult leaders already do. I mean, throughout my career, I see these cult leaders that come together and they start by winning people over through their charm and charisma. But once they build trust, that's when they start to introduce fear of being maybe left behind, or fear of spiritual darkness, or a fear of losing God's favor. And as they tighten this grip, that's when they start claiming private revelation, and they have these secrets that nobody else has. So they're combining charm, fear, secret knowledge, and it becomes this leash that keeps followers under control. And I really like your thoughts about that.
So I think it's funny because this whole situation has taken me down a very similar path of research. I've stepped into, I think it was weird. You brought up Hitler before. It came to me the same idea. It's like, how did someone get people to do that? How do you do it? And it's not coming from a sensational place. It's literally just the psychology. How did he get people to invoke his ideas? And then you start looking at what Germany was like at that time. You look at the hopelessness, you look at how he spoke, you look at all these different factors, right? Well, when it comes to Lori, one thing I can tell you for a fact is that she was not pleased with not having a LDS husband. And I think that she always wanted a spiritual giant or spiritual equal, because she basically would get with someone and then they would get baptized and then they would be the convert, and that she would, I guess, be the veteran, whatever you want to call it. But no one was ever like interested in her spiritual stuff like she was. So what interests me the most is she does not seem like one to be led. She's not someone I would be like, oh yeah, she's a follower. She's usually more of a leader. More people are more, come to her. Like, she ran all the family parties. She led that stuff. She led the events. She led primary. She led singing time. She always had like leadership roles. So it's really interesting to watch a dynamic where she goes from being a leader to now listening to someone tell her this stuff that's so unbiblical, so not even in the LDS lore. And I try to say that all the time because people get mad that I said anything about the LDS. I'm just saying it's not even part of the church. It's not part of the LDS church at all. It has nothing to do with it. So my question became, well, how did he do it? The biggest part with this whole idea that Chad came in and, like you said, gasoline and match, once they got together, I think he wanted her so badly that he'd tell her anything she wanted to hear, and she wanted to hear it. And I think he worshiped her like a goddess, and she loved that. And so what he said was a lot easier to follow because she was getting something that her ego or whatever part of her was being pleased. But I did notice the fear side too, right? When she said, I can't do this with you anymore, they were going to break up at one point. And he goes, well, I can't protect you. So you need to text me a thumbs up, or your protection, the bubble that I've put over you is gone. There's the fear. So it was interesting because it to the T, like what cult leaders do to keep people in line once they maybe have ideas of, hey, that shouldn't be here. It's like, no, here's the grip from him. It's manipulation. And again, just to reiterate this one point, this is why I think his letters are dangerous, in my personal opinion. I understand free speech, but this is very, very different situation when it comes to him having free reign to say things and indoctrinate people.
Hey folks, it's Mike from Profiling
Hey,
Evil, and I got to tell you about one of my new secret weapons. It's called
a judicial record that says you are not a persecuted martyr, you are a killer.
Yeah.
And that narrative cannot be rewritten by this. And I think I usually take a pretty even plane on videos that I do, but this, because I've seen it over and again, whether it's in the FLDS or in other cults like the Zion Society or this one, the dynamics are so similar and so cockeyed, offensive. Yeah, I think about your Uncle Alex for a moment. If are you okay talking there for a minute?
Yeah, we can talk about it. I've talked about it on my channel, so we can definitely talk about it.
Okay. So kind of central in the timeline of killing Charles and the kids and Tammy, dies of natural causes. They say pulmonary emboli or something, if I remember the ME's report. And it's been a long time since I've read that. But how has this tangled loyalty and his placement in this whole picture impacted you? And what are your thoughts? Because family enmeshment is really a tough thing in these cult cases, because outsiders are trying to still love and support and hope that their loved one, Lori, gets their senses about them and comes back. But the realities are, it's usually a path they have to figure out on their own.
Yeah. And if you want an honest truth, I don't think Lori's ever coming out of that state. Ever. I don't think Lori will ever not be where she's at right now. I just don't think that will ever happen. I think the reality comes crashing in on her, she will crumble. So she has to stay delusional. It's so I never imagined, first of all, that Alex could do it. Like when I first heard Alex's involvement, I was like, there's no way you're that stupid. There's no way they were able to get to you. I did not know he had that much loyalty to Lori. I did not know. I just didn't really look into it. So once I watched the trials, a lot came to light, and I started to do some psychological deep diving on Alex. The reality is, number one, it was really hard because I wasn't close to Alex, but I'd had my moments with him. He was my uncle. He was at our family functions. He was kind of the pop in, pop out person until my wedding. For some reason, he was really close with my mom. And I remember taking notice of that in 2018. I was like, huh, he's never really around. He's here a lot. He's always here when we come over to the house, which is where we were having the wedding. And he's really helpful. So those were like still stood out because he's not around a lot. When I heard about everything, especially even with Charles, my opinion of him changed from Charles. That was it. My opinion changed of Alex. I never wanted to see Alex. I never wanted to be around him again. Like it didn't. I knew in my stomach that something was wrong. And I just kept thinking to myself, even if that were the case, wouldn't you shoot someone in their like leg or shoot a shot in the ceiling to scare them or shoot by them first before taking a shot? And I understand, like I've done a ton of research on police officers in those moments and you know, just there's so many different scenarios where it's like in reality I knew that for some reason there's something felt wrong.
And so when you see this moment in time when, according to Zulema, that Alex says,
look, it's gone. You guys see that? The sign's gone. Oh man.
Something to the effect of, holy cow, they're going to frame me for this or something. Do you think he ever had a moment where he all of a sudden thought, this isn't about religion or anything else? Or do you think he all along just had it in him to commit homicide?
I think at first, if my assessment was when I finally learned more, what I mean by that is watch the case. I watched my mom's trial, not the entire thing, but a lot of the key points. And once I heard everything, I really came to the conclusion that Alex was the most indoctrinated of the three, the most believing. Once though he saw the betrayal, I do think he had a moment of fear, and I think he started to question if it was real. And I think the stress got to him. The fact that he died the way that he did is, I don't know, it's just the most wild thing ever. Like the timing, the everything about it just will never make sense to me. The only conclusion I've ever come to is just either the stress got him or God said it's time for you to go. It's one of the two. And I think he did have that moment though of fear. And I think he questioned, but I think before that time, I think he was the most deep in. I think he believed it more than anybody else over Lori and Chad.
Yeah. Imagine if you're in a conspiratory mindset like Lori and Chad, and Alex has that aha moment, that the risk he poses, and yet we have to accept the medical examiner's finding, although Tammy's was found as natural too until deeper investigation. So I guess the jury is still out on that. But when we talk about those two coming together, that fuel and flame coming together, do you think they were destined for this collapse through this ritual crime process? Did their pairing supercharge the risk and create the perfect storm? Or were these just two massive storms colliding and they would have gone on to do their own wacky stuff with or without each other? What are your thoughts there?
That's a great question too. I truly believe that they might not have got where they got to without each other. But I do believe they're both very mentally unstable. I do believe that they're both heading down the wrong path. They wouldn't have, so I don't, again, Chad probably would have never done what he did without the incentive of wanting to be with Lori. What her incentive was to be with him will never make, neither one of it will never make sense. But I don't think she would have done anything to Charles or the kids had she not had him. And that was her apple of her eye, apparently. So to answer your question in a really, I guess, confusing way, is they both would have continued to go down a weird religious path. I don't think they would have done any type of homicides. I don't think they would have gone down that path. I don't think Lori would have went to Alex that one day and said, you need to do this to the kids and the family without Chad. And I don't think Chad would have said the same thing about Tammy unless he wanted to be with Lori. So, but religiously and how crazy they both were prior and how long they could have gone down that path, who knows where that would have led.
Boy, isn't that
I want to pause right there and just explain kind of what I mean by this is without her having Chad Daybell, Lori, I need to be more clear. I'm sorry. Without Lori having Chad Daybell to run to and be and want to be with, I don't think there would have been that incentive. I think they both would have continued to go down a spiritual path. I don't know how them coming together created what it did. I think that's the $1 million question, and it always will be, is how in the world did this happen? But if they had never met, I think they both just would have been more religious nuts. He would have continued to write books because he didn't have anything to get rid of at that point. He wanted her, she wanted him. That is what caused the majority of it. So their desire for one another was the most powerful thing in this entirety, because that's what caused all of this to happen. And so you look at it from a little bit of an outside perspective. If they weren't in love, whatever they want to call themselves, if he hadn't been able to manipulate her and she was able to be manipulated in that way, and then vice versa, she manipulated him. I don't know. It feels like they wouldn't have gone down this path. They wouldn't have, I don't think they would have turned on their families. I really don't.
That's the truth. You know, the texts and the testimony showed obvious planning language, the spiritual scoring, the victims, light and dark, zombies, etc. But when you think about those communications, do you think it was at that point true delusion, or were they trying to rid themselves of, and I'm so sorry to even present this, to rid themselves of the motherly or responsibility of Tylee and JJ, but still collect the income?
Yeah. No, I think if you look at them now, they've both walked back a lot since this went public, right? They're not convicted of their belief system. You've not heard Lori said there's never been zombies. She's backpedaled everything except for basically almost sounding like she's back to almost just being LDS. And she's tried to walk back everything in those texts, all those seance prayers, all those gatherings, all those castings, everything they did. She backwalked it all. So my personal belief is that it's very complex, right? Alex, I think, believed the most. Lori her head's in the clouds. So whatever she was thinking about and wanting to do, she just was able to rid herself of all guilt. And probably, I mean, and this is going to sound very callous, but it's not. It's just reality. I was way harder to get to. So it would have been a lot more complicated. And that's what's so unfortunate, because you would trust a mom to take care of her kids. That's not a question. But I wasn't in the home. I wasn't anywhere near her. So she would have had to work a lot harder. And I had a wife. So you have to understand, if I would have had any kind of insurance, it probably would have switched over. to my wife, or I don't know how insurance works like that, but if she would have had a policy on me that went to her, I still think it would have been harder for her. But I mean, it's not like I don't think I was completely outside of the realm of it. I don't know. I don't know what their plans were. But they never leveled me as dark either. So I don't know. It's the stupidest, most evil, disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life. But just objectively, I think if they could have made money off of me and they did not get Charles's, I could have easily been somebody on their list to get money from. Thoughts and feelings, because she's just so out of here, like the most disassociated you could possibly be. Chad, I cannot figure out. I don't know if he seems so cold and callous. Chad seems to be more like a psychopath to me, like someone who just doesn't have any empathy, who lacks any kind of reaction to anything. Like he just seems so dead and cold. So I think, based off of some of Chad's thoughts and feelings, that he thought it was okay to do it. This is a good question. Do you think that Chatty is trying to create a new narrative for his innocence by writing those letters in preparation to appeal his case, and the same for Lori's book? Yeah, it's a really good point. There's probably multiple reasons why, but yes, they both have appeals. They're both trying to walk it back. They both like to get out. They're both going to pretend for the rest of their lives. He wants to obviously lower his sentence and get out at some point. So maybe him acting like, well, look, I've been writing. It's whatever he thinks. I don't know. But strategy wise, this could easily be brought up at his appeals, which go on for a long time. He needed to lead the group by giving them some religious reason, right? Like you can't just come up and say, hey, you need to do what I say. It's like, well, why? That's what you go back to the cult leaders. They have to have some kind of way to pull you in. And so I think he was aware that his religious stuff was able to cause and stir storms in people. Then he saw he could get Lori because she's biting the line. And then she's got Alex. How perfect is that? So that's how I look at it. I think he was the most out of it, Chad, the one who's telling everybody everything. Lori's in the middle because she wanted to believe it, but I think she's a little bit more just out of there, just disassociated. And I think Alex was actually the most believing. So that's how I've always viewed those three.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. From the investigator perspective, what I see is delusion being turned into a weapon of control. And that is really frightening to me, because these beliefs weren't just odd or eccentric. I think they were shaped in very tactical ways that it justified, because morally, doing something like this, murdering, is wrong. But if you're doing God's will, then I'm not going to offend God. That saying we've heard these distorted, self-proclaimed prophets say many, many times. And I often said, if Lori were or Chad were crazy, and I'm now making a diagnosis, so please forgive me for that. But if they were crazy, they would have been on top of the roof after committing those homicides, yelling, "I got rid of another zombie." But instead, they're hiding away. So they're convincing their followers. They're trying to convince us even today, through their distorted lens, that they have authority, and that authority would then excuse violence, because divinity is always necessary.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think what's so hard about that whole situation is there was probably at one point a good thought, like, oh, I'm going to try to follow this religious stuff harder, and here's somebody who really gets it. But then it turns into that where she's weaponizing herself towards him. He's weaponizing spiritual manipulation and powers and things, which I don't know how she believed that he had that. And he desired her and was, it's just this huge loop. Where Alex comes in, what he got out of it, I don't understand. Like what was Alex's gain, other than Alex probably, this is my opinion and diagnosis of this situation, is Alex had always felt like a black sheep who needed to earn his way back. He'd been excommunicated from the church multiple times. I think he thought he was a screw up. And here you are actually really special. All your trials in your life, everything you've ever been through is for this purpose because you're so special. The devil's trying to get you, trying to stop you. And that's why your life's been so hard. But I'll tell you something. I'm a prophet. And I'm telling you right now, God's happy with you. God's pleased with you. And he wants you to do this thing for him. You just need to sacrifice and do this thing. And once you do that, you're going to be back in good standing with God. That's the manipulation. And Chad is able to do it. It's real. And he was able to convince Alex somehow. I don't know. I'll never understand it, right? Because like we talked about, most cult leaders have some kind of quality of following them, something about them, passion, the way they speak, the way something about them makes you follow them. Why you'd follow Chad Daybell anywhere, I'll never understand. But it is what happened.
That is so insightful. Thank you. Because if you make somebody feel special, they're elite. They have a to use the vernacular that they would have used, that they are secure in their calling on earth. That's very empowering to people. You know, I was really offended at Lori's sentencing in particular when she said that the kids were happy and busy in the spirit world. And I think we believe that as Christians, that if we believe in a life hereafter, that it wouldn't be a sad life if you're back with a loving God. So I'm okay with the idea that they're happy, but for her to cast them as happy was personally offensive to me. But I wondered how you felt about that.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing she told me, and real quick, yeah, he did it. He was up in the mountains. It was beautiful. The sun was going down for him, and we had the sign fall down. Then I tried to put the sign back up, and I think it fell again. And I said, I'm not going to try it again. I'll fix it later. But it wasn't forever. I think we just caught the very end of the sun, our interview that I did on my channel. I called her last year around this time, some almost a year ago. And I just gave her a chance to say her piece. The first thing she tells me is Tylee came back to her multiple times. Her JJ and Tylee come back to her. And she says, Tylee apologized for being a brat her whole life to me. Right. So Tylee left heaven to come to Lori in the spirit and apologize for being a brat to her. And then she tells her, she says that she has all these visitations, and JJ and Tylee have basically told her how great of a mother she is, what a wonderful mother she is, and basically visit her to comfort her and acknowledge her as a spiritual giant. It's nuts. It's nuts, right? So when she started saying stuff like that, where it's like, I mean, once she got to that point where she told me that Tylee took JJ's life and then took her own life, and then she found them, and then basically just said, take their bodies, do what you want with them, and then went to Hawaii and got married, but was heartbroken on the floor, right? She said, you don't know about what I went through, right? She's such a narcissist. And I mean, if you want to know the definition of narcissist, you can look it up, and the picture in there is Lori. I'm telling you, it's insane because everything is about her. So when she said that about them being happy, that's another way of her selling that what she did wasn't the worst thing ever. She has to live in that reality, because if she ever steps out of the realm of her delusions that she's self-inflicting, mind you, I really believe, this is my opinion, she's self-inflicting delusions, because on the other side is the reality that you took your husband's life, your daughter's life, your son's life, and you were part of the death of your husband's wife, and that you tried to take another life, which was Brandon. Right. So it's a long list. And I think she's protecting herself in her brain, because the reality of that would crumble her.
You are nailing so many important things, because this is classic martyr narrative. I mean, I've talked to so many stinking cult leaders. I sometimes think, man, why didn't I just go to work as a baker or something and not have to deal with this. But it takes personal pain and punishment away from the individual, twists it into a supposed proof of divine purpose. So instead of facing accountability, Lori and Chad are casting themselves as suffering servants, which is so stinking offensive to me. People who are enduring hardship not because of their own choices, which leads me to my next question about how do you feel about Chad? He's still trying to reassert that he's a self-proclaimed prophet, but now your mom saying, all of this is the God that she believes in's will to put her in the prison to save the souls of all those poor women in prison.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second. Just to kind of give you guys and walk back a little bit of what was said, we have the theory of Lori, who has now come out and said this, believes that she has been put in prison because her job assigned by God is to preach to the other prisoners. And we've heard her give her excuses of, she's never done anything wrong. She's never been wrong in this situation. And this was all the plan. So she said, whether it's primary, or whatever she said, something like that. If it was primary, or whatever service she's in, she's going to do it, and she's going to do it with a full heart. So that has been her. If you guys, I'm sure you've heard it, but if you didn't, this is just to kind of catch you up on all the psychology here that's going on. Lori has now said she is put in prison by God because she's a servant, but then she's going to break out and float into the sky and all that stuff. So it's pretty ridiculous. And Chad has not yet, I don't think, revealed to us what he really, really thinks. I haven't even read all the letters, to be honest with you. I needed a break. So we're dealing with two different kinds of people who really don't know how to think or believe, but they're still in this cult. This is what I'll tell you. I think that both of them deep down in their hearts know the reality. I truly do believe that. I believe that they both know that that is not true. But I think it's easier to stick with what you've been, I guess, whatever made you excited in the first place, whatever got them so excited about this idea that there's multiple lives in the spirit realm and this whole idea of like portaling, like all this stuff that got them so excited about this stuff. It's just easier to stay there and protect your brain. I think that they're pitching the idea that the only reason they're in prison is to preach the gospel is just like adding to the list of what you're going to have to answer for on Judgment Day. And I hate to be any less, I mean, that's as blunt as I can be. Like, you can't tell me you feel secure about going and meeting your maker at the end of this and saying, I was your faithful servant, when you know that's not why you're in prison. Because there are people who they say they believe in, prophets in the Bible, that suffered for their belief system. And like you mentioned earlier, why wouldn't you stick by your convictions? Where is that? Where'd all that conviction go? You were real enough to take life over it. Why are you backtracking it now? So, and that's an interesting point, right? We've gone from this from the beginning. Conviction. There are people who have religious beliefs that will go all the way, who are unafraid of consequence of going all the way because they believe. Well, they won't even take any responsibility, and it's all blame shifting. And then it was the lawyers telling them you need to shift blame and all that stuff. So it's interesting to really look at this now from such a wide point and see the operations of the people, because Lori and Chad are the main leaders of this cult. And even they don't know what they're doing. The reality is they're gonna probably pitch that for the rest of their lives to protect themselves. And I think they both want the public to think they missed the truth of them and that the justice system just decided we're going to go get them, because that is classic martyr, classic, die for the cause. And they want to believe that they have some type of cause, as if they just didn't steal and cheat and do all those things, right? It's like none of that exists, only that they're good people and that the justice system came after them. So yeah, I hope they're not talking to anybody. I hope they don't ever preach a word to a single person, honestly.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Shauna.
No, I really feel bad because our time is winding down, and I got so
Yeah.
many questions that I want to
You're
ask.
good.
But when you think about these high-profile cases, you think about your case, incredibly high profile, or you think about the Delphi case and all the
Kelly?
attention it's gotten, or a John Bonet, and you had the opportunity to meet some other families while we were at CrimeCon and see, number one, that you're not alone, but you saw this incredible crowd of 7,000 people who are interested in this. And thankfully, that group, in my opinion, is very respectful. But what do you think about the mass attention to these criminal cases, the fire hose of attention that comes? And what was that experience like for you? Because again, I really worry about this true crime community that we're a part of, because some can really exploit versus help. What are your thoughts?
First of all, I just want to say what a beautiful way to put that. And, that's what we've always talked about in our space, is not just doing what everybody else does. And again, let me always preface this by saying this is not to disrespect anybody's channel. We're not hating on people. They're doing their job. They're doing their part. They're doing it the way they do it. And also being creative in their own way. But it's also like there's another part of this side. There's another side to this story, and it's more from this part, the psychology part, the healing part, hearing from the victims themselves, hearing from the people who have survived. And there's got to be a balance of both. And I think Mike did a great job in this conversation, just being able to highlight that. I love that you said that. Number one, it should be about learning, and the exposure of what's happened is about learning for our society, for us to be better people, to identify cults, to identify maybe people who you see around you that are going off their rocker. That should be the point of talking about this stuff, right? It should always lead back to something, and then honoring, the victims and people who are dealing and grieving. The hard part is I learned a really hard lesson in media. I learned how media works very quickly. And that was probably the hardest part, because you feel like you're talking like this, and it's like nothing you said actually came out of your mouth. Only 2% of what you said made it. And I just never knew. I never knew that's how it worked. And so you really understand what it's like out there. And when you get so much attention and you get so many eyeballs, in the beginning, I had people telling me, you're the one. I mean, comments on every social media post, people taking pictures of me at Walmart. Lori Vallow's son's shopping for watermelons. Okay. Yeah, I'm right there. That's me. I mean, you know what I'm saying? But it's so hype. It's not even a lie, though. I was at Walmart, freaking just looking like a bum, and people were taking pics, man. It's just crazy. It's crazy. Like, yeah, I'm in the produce. That's me. Profile that everyone doesn't know what's going on, and there's so much information out there, and so much untrue information. And then all these TV. There was a Facebook group that took a picture of us while when we used to live in a different city. When Kelsey and I were so right as it was happening, they took a picture of us and posted it in a group, and then it went out from the group. Shows pick it up, and they say one thing wrong, and that gets picked up, and that, so I learned so much about it. What I've always tried to do on my channel is just say, look, there's situations that are high profile like this. It's recentering to what's really going on. If someone's missing, a child's missing, a person's missing, that's the focus until we can try to figure out what's going on. If there's a criminal on the loose, we got to figure that out, and just try to really recenter it, because it is. This chaos. Was though at the very beginning of it all, when it was all viral, it was everywhere, and nobody knew who I was. So there was that time where nobody knew who I was, so they didn't know how involved I was. And so everybody said all those, you know, I had to take that at the beginning. So I'm looking for my siblings. I'm trying to help the police. I'm talking to the FBI. I'm doing all this stuff in the background. And all these people are like, they said I was the one that shot at Tammy Daybell. They were saying things like I was paid off by Lori. They were saying like they were adding to the pain because the internet picked it up. Well, then a bunch of people got phone numbers off of a list and started calling each phone number looking for people. And I started getting these random phone calls. This is on top of people showing up at our house, you know, cameras in hand, mics in hand at your front door, at your little apartment. You know what I mean? They would put sticks in your door so that way they would know. I watched a guy get on his knees, put a stick in our door so that way if we opened it, it would drop, right? Exactly. A lot of stuff happened, man. It all, like when I tell you at 22 years old, every single thing that I had or known all crumbled in a matter of like 2 months before we even found Tylee and JJ. Like my entire life, everything, family, friends, life, everything that I had just fell through the, like, it just like, it's like going to another world. Everything that I knew was gone, had changed. And then you add in the public perception and people don't know who you are. So they're like, were you at the pool party Lori felt like threw after Charles? And I'm like, I was there pretty late. I didn't see a pool party, and hell no, I would not be there. So what are you like? I had to deal with that. I had to deal with the internet at an early point during all of this stuff. And like, I wasn't really on the internet like that, but it was a hard thing to go through because that's what I try to give you guys an understanding of. We have to be very careful when it comes to making judgments and thoughts so quickly. We need a lot of information, and we want to just start a conversation, but not make a bunch of conclusions when we don't have a lot of understanding and evidence of things. But that was a hard part of life. You know what I mean? And people don't know who you are. And so they just make up theories, and then everybody becomes a detective. And you can't just be a part of IPS. You got to earn it. You get the public opinion on top of the media, and everyone is asking you questions as if they have, and I hate to sound like rude, but like in the beginning, people are like, ask you stuff like if they saw you at Target, right? They're like, so you contact with your mom, could you call her right now? And I'm like, what? Like, first of all, no. Secondly, what entitlement do you have? Just because you saw this on TV, it doesn't mean you can just walk up and ask me a question like that. So that's what I think I've tried to do, is just rehumanize ourselves on the channel, rehumanize the victims, and really bring it back to reality. Like, this is somebody's life. And I had to unfortunately experience that. The best thing I can tell people is just, if you're in that situation ever, try to find your own voice, whatever that looks like. And hopefully people can hear what you have to say, not what everybody else is just going to spin on it. But it's a difficult thing to navigate for sure.
Yeah. So tell me the coolest memory you have of Charles Vallow.
Coolest memory. When I first met Charles.
Or the most meaningful to you personally that you reflect on often.
So I'll tell you both real quick, because they're both pretty quickly. My coolest memory ever is when I first met Charles. There was a movie that was really popular at the time called Are We There Yet? And it was with Ice Cube. Charles had the same car. It's a Lincoln Navigator, and it had the TVs in the back seat. And he wore, nice clothes and tucked in. His shirt was tucked in, and he had his dress pants and his shoes. I thought he was like a baller. I was like, this guy is cool as he's smooth, right? He also did something for our family when my mom got divorced. We basically received, because we had left the house without taking anything, so we basically got our stuff later. We had 3 forks, 3 knives, 3 spoons, just 3, because there was me, Tylee, and my mom. So we had nothing, like, as far as silverware or any appliances and things like that. We moved into our other house. So Charles went out of his way to go to Costco when they was dating my mom. And we came home, and he had filled our kitchen with like head to toe appliances, like dating, not engaged, nothing of that nature. He just did that because that's who he was. And so I remember thinking, like, this man wants to take care of our family. And so that's one of the things I told my mom, like, yeah, I was 10 years old. I didn't even know, but it's like this, he obviously cares, right? One of my most fond memories, I mean, we went on so many vacations, had so much fun together. One of the most, it's crazy how life happens like this, but in 2018, before I had my daughter, he started to want to meet up with me as just man to man and talk to me about where I was at and what I was thinking and feeling. And I talked about learning his business, and I wanted to like, I really like told him, I'm like, you obviously are amazing at what you do. I'd love to learn from you. And just that connection we had as men was like the most special thing, because you don't always get that moment, but we did have that, and it was right before unfortunately everything happened. But I got to have one-on-one time with him as a man, talk about my life, talk about being a dad, talk about all these different things that you just don't really do when you're growing up. We didn't have a lot of one-on-one time like that. So those are the things that I hold the most dear to me, is just the time I had with him in simple moments, over the Disneyland trips or the funny things that we did. You know, that those are the things I hold on to dearly. One thing I'll add to that too, there's so many memories I could tell you, but one of my favorite things ever is, so Charles, so I call him my dad, but I always tell Charles, so you guys know. Charles, we went to Miami, and there's this place that sells, it's called the Kitchen Sink. It's ice cream. And we had gone there one time before, years before that, because Charles's friend had a property down there in Miami on the beach, like a little tiny hotel that he owned or something, right? So we go stay there. So we came back and brought like a whole squad of people. Well, we went to go to this place and eat the kitchen sink, and it's legitimately like an industrial sink full of different ice creams. It's insane, right? It's the biggest thing you've ever seen. And so he got it, and we all go to eat it, and the guy comes up and says, "Hey, hold on. You need to pay for the extra people eating this." It was like a limit, like you can only have 8 people, and we had like 20 something people there. And it's the biggest thing you've ever seen. And the guy's like, I'm going to charge you like per person that's going to eat out of this." And Charles went ballistic. He was like, "How in the world are you going to charge me to eat ice cream that I paid for? How did you?" I mean, it's one of the funniest things I've ever. Well, I was young and I was crying laughing, because he was so he was how he was like making them realize how stupid it was. He just would ask the question so simply, like, "So you're telling me I have to pay per spoon? How does that work? Is it per ounce?" Like he was like going off. And the guy was kind of rude, and he's like, "No, that's our policy. You're not allowed to eat." I'm like, it was the biggest thing of ice cream you've ever seen in your life, and you're going to charge for outside of what, 10 people eating it, 8 people, whatever the limit was. And they're like, "You really," the guy's like, "You can't all eat it. I have to start charging you for that." That was crazy. And Charles saved, we were at Rosati's, which is a little Italian spot, and we were all eating lunch, and a woman started to choke on her food legitimately. Charles, without a thought, stood up, ran to her, picked her up, like Heimlich picked her up, saved her life. He, without a thought, I didn't even know if he knew the Heimlich, but he literally got her to stop choking, and he literally stood. I mean, stood up from our table, our meal, stood up, grabs her, and was picking her in the air until it came out and saved her. And I was really young when that happened too. So, but I remember that because you'll never forget something like that. But imagine that scenario happening, like the person to respond to that situation. Crazy. I have so many different memories I could go over with you guys.
That is awesome. What about Tylee?
Me and Ty have had our whole childhoods together. We have a million memories. We were the classic siblings. We were the frenemies. We hated each other and loved each other. One of the best memories ever with Tylee is, and I always tell the story. So people who have heard the story, I always tell this story. When it was Christmas, I think I was about 17, 18 years old. I'm older than her, right? And we were at Ross, and my mom said for Christmas we could take our budgets and go buy whatever. That was our Christmas gift rather than like getting gifts. So we're like, cool, we'll go get all our stuff. Well, they had a bunch of stuff that I wanted. So I was like way over my budget. And my little sister, who's, I don't remember how old she was, but she gave up the rest of her budget, almost like maybe over $100 of that. Should have been 12 to me, so I could go be selfish and get the things that I wanted. And the reason that memory sticks with me so hard is because no kid does that. No child sacrifices what they want for someone else, especially someone who's older than them. And it showed me what a caring, loving person my sister was. And that's like one of those things, like obviously just the conversations that I've had with her, the times we've sat in the car on car rides and played games, I Spy, talking, doing a radio show where you call in and have to pretend to answer a question to win a Ferrari, right? Like those things. So the whole thing that we did, Kelsey was there. We played for the whole trip. We played a game where we did trivia. It's like a 6-hour drive from Arizona, like Phoenix area to Anaheim, which is where Disneyland's at. And we did that the whole time. And it's so weird. Like those are the moments that you never forget. That's what you hold on to. The trips are great. You always remember that stuff too. But like what I have always gone back to is the simple moments of eating dinner together. It's so crazy. It's like that's what you hold on to the most. They're amazing memories. But I have those type of moments like that where I could really see my sister now that I look back on when I think of my memories. That's the things that stick out to me is the small moments and then knowing who she was, seeing who she was.
Wow. Okay, now here's the tough one.
Mhm.
That little boy you adopted into your life. Tell me about JJ.
Man, if JJ could tell you anything, he would tell you how much wrestling, WWE, fighting, playing. I threw that kid up in the air 100 feet on the trampoline. Like I played with JJ constantly. The most special summer I ever had with JJ is when I came back from college. My wife and I babysat him all summer because my mom asked us to just kind of watch him over the summer. So we just got to take him all the time with us. And so we took him to Chuck E. Cheese. We took him to Toys R Us when it was still open. We took him everywhere. And it was just like the same thing. Simple, fun times. Going on a little mini game with him, watching him ride one of those fake roller coaster simulators. Like those memories are what I miss. That's the stuff I miss the most is a moment with him doing something super simple, watching him go bowling, watching him do something for the first time and just enjoying himself. JJ had so much energy that every time you're with him, you could eat, you could have fun. He's just going to make it fun because doing simple things with him was just so enjoyable and he was so energetic.
Colby, I can't thank you enough. I mean, we held off talking for an awfully long time, and I'm so grateful. And I don't know if you have any questions, but I'm going to let you have the final word.
Yeah, no, and I want to say thank you. And what really draws me to you is the fact that you can talk about these subjects, that you do rehumanize, that you do hit on these things, not to try to get people to say, oh my gosh, and the gasp, right? You're not looking for the shock. And I think that's what makes it easy to have this conversation is I know that these conversations can be helpful to other people, and that's all I want. And I'm grateful we got to do this, and I'm grateful we got to talk, and I'm grateful I got to see you at CrimeCon. I liked your shirt, by the way. I didn't tell you that. I liked the shirt with the logo. I was like, that's clean. I gotta steal that one. I'm gonna have to put my logo on the shirt though. I like that.
Difference between cults and traditional mainstream religions, whether it's Islam or Judaism or Christianity, is that cults do things in secrecy where mainstream religions point toward the God in which they believe in. And I just think people of faith, regardless, uh, are so fortunate. And I see so many people that have no faith and have
Thank you guys for being here, by the way. I really appreciate it. This is almost done. And then I'm going to talk to you guys for a few minutes.
no hope. And I see a lot of people that want to blame faiths for the decisions that predators make within those. And that was the secret sauce when I talked to police officers, was that when you are investigating crimes that involve ritual behavior, focus on the elements of the crime, the elements that prove murder, the elements that prove sexual assault, and then bring in all the wacky beliefs later in the sentencing. But don't cloud the water. How can people follow you and find you?
So my YouTube channel is Colby J. Ryan, and my Instagram and my X are the same exact one. So that's how you can find me on here.
And folks, I mean, all of this that we've talked about tonight is exactly why we can't let prison letters or martyr-style monologues rewrite realities. The reality and the record is still really clear, and I hope that you continue to focus on that. These murder cases were proven in court. The forensics are undeniable. The verdicts stand, and our job is to hold truth steady and make sure that it isn't buried under spin or sediment. With what's happening right now with Chad Daybell, I believe is a marketing play to rewrite history. And more than anything, I think we need to honor Tylee and JJ and Tammy and Charles and Brandon. And you know what? The list may go on, Colby. I just don't know, but we need to keep those stories alive. And I want to thank all of you for supporting Profiling Evil. And I hope you're checking us out on Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you like audio podcasts, especially if you like your true crime on the go, check out Profiling Evil's audio podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. And from all of us at Profiling Evil, which happens to be me now that the back office has all abandoned me, thanks so much. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.
So big shout out to Mike. He's a great guy, as you guys know. Conversations like that can be really hard to have. You could tell he approached everything with a lot of sensitivity. It didn't feel invasive because I didn't feel like his intention was to try to get you to say something crazy. So you guys can go give him a follow. He's awesome, for real. Kelly says, hey, Colby, it's my birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Hope you're having a good day. Glad you guys were here. Appreciate you. I thought it was a little bit different than a lot of the things that I've really done in the past. I felt that his questions were so precise. It was easy to have some different angles. And it's been a long time of healing where I've walked through the valleys, the dark valleys where I've faced the realities of how dark this really is in hopes to help other people. So some of the questions that he brought up where it is sensitive subjects, I can handle those questions now. And I always hope it helps other people, especially other people who have been involved and are dealing with the consequences of crime. Just trying to help everybody I can. You guys know that I love you. Thank you for being here so much. I appreciate you and love you. We will have so much more coming up this week. I just want to say thank you to all of our channel members. You guys are amazing. All of our Patreons, and just thank you for being a part of this community. You guys are the community. It's you. And our lives are amazing. We are going to have more videos coming up for you as well. And do not forget, you have a giveaway you can go get into. It's on the community tab. I'll make sure you guys have it. We'll be doing that. You have till next Friday to get in on that. Just go comment Scar Warrior on our giveaway so you guys have that. Thank you for everything. Love you guys. See you soon.